As Donald Trump reemerges on the world stage with bold economic moves, including a fresh 50% tariff threat on Indian goods. We speak to veteran journalist and global trade expert D. Ravi Kanth to decode what this means for India's economy, diplomacy, and future trade negotiations. Thank you for joining me, sir. Donald Trump has proposed an additional 25% tariff, taking duties on some Indian goods to as high as 50%. So this has sparked widespread concern, across Indian export sector. So how do you interpret this tariff announcement?
Uh, what he announced today, and whereby he increased the overall tariff to 50%, it has two stages. Right tomorrow morning, you would have 25% tariff imposed on all Indian goods exported to the American market. There are several very important items which will definitely be affected. For a while, I think India will be dislocated from exporting these items. The items include textiles and clothing, pharmaceuticals, generic drugs, the prawns that which are exported largely from the Indian coastal states. Then you have diamond and jewelry items. Then you have auto parts. Then there are two other items which are subjected to 50% tariff already. They have been that is steel and aluminum, and so it's a very grim situation. That 25% tariff will come tomorrow morning, will come into effect on 7th August, followed by another 25% that will be on account of India's, whatever purchases that are being made on the oil front with Russia. That will take 3 weeks. So they will come into effect on 27th of August. So in between, you still have time. But what he did is an extreme coercive action, because India has been one of the few countries that has been holding negotiations and discussions with them. And India is actually very keen to reach an agreement. There were also suggestions that an interim agreement would be soon announced, but all that has now been appended. So India faces, it's a grim challenge, and it's a challenge where the world is witnessing an extreme form of bullying by one of the world's largest economy, which is called a hegemon. But the hegemon, it's a declining hegemon. So we will face serious difficulties to start with from tomorrow. And let us see. I mean, I believe the Indians have been negotiating, but the immediate statement put out by the Indian Foreign Office is very, telling, that they describe this latest action as unfair, unreasonable, and unjustified. They could have, in fact, short of saying that Donald Trump is bullying, they may be couched in some kind of diplomatic finesse, in which they merely said it is unfair, unreasonable, and unjustified.
You've actually given me a lot to ponder about, and we'll dissect it one by one. First, let's talk about the oil deal. Trump has repeatedly referenced India's oil purchases from Russia as a sticking point, even though Europe continues a similar trade. So there's growing concern that this may be used to justify harsher trade actions. So what are India's options now, especially considering that buying oil from Russia, benefits a global trade?
Uh, we have been buying oil from Russia for several years. I mean, it's not a new act. It's a kind of a continuation. In fact, it goes back to long time back, and this is a kind of sovereign option for a government. Now, what Donald Trump seems to have done is that he picked up India in the chain of countries that buy oil from Russia. I mean, there is a gang up between the European Union and India, United States, to put pressure on India. They are unable to put the same level of pressure, for example, on China. China also buys a large quantities of oil from Russia. Then they will start putting pressure on Iran. So it, even if, I mean, today I'm told, according, it's being reported that the Indian National Security Advisor at this point of time is in Moscow. The question here is that should sovereign nations with sovereign responsibilities can unnecessarily be bullied by a very bigger player, and he seems to be thinking that this will sort of play according to his rules, his, level of intentions, which are sometimes very irrational and cannot be justified, as India has said. So that there may be options of buying other oil from other sources, but leaving Russia at this point of time will be a sort of a kind of a bad. Uh, it'll have a bad effect, a negative effect on you, on India, because India has a long-standing relationship with Russia, not just on oil, but on defense items. Suppose if you stop buying today oil from Russia, then they will not stop there. I mean, this is how a classical bully operates. He first extracts something from you, then he will say, this is not enough, and he will then start moving the goalposts, and then he will then extend to other items. For example, India has had a long and continuing to have a long relationship on the defense side. Now, that cannot be overnight, stopped, because there has been.
We'll come to that part of non-trade deals in a short while, sir. But before that, Trump's negotiation style. You often mention bullying, and it it often involves turning up the pressure early, then renegotiating. So with this
Correct.
tariff hike, yeah, some analysts believe he's preparing to extract future concessions. So is Trump hardening his negotiating position ahead of a possible trade deal with India in the future?
Uh, that could well be true. In fact, that trade deal is still there, but how long will it take? In what form will it materialize? Because given the kind of sudden freeze in the relations between US and India, despite India playing a very close sort of relationship with Trump, and this is where I think the New Delhi has seemed to have blundered right from the day one, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi went there and announced that great deal called MAGA plus MEGA equals MEGA. We've unnecessarily showed, India has unnecessarily showed its hand right from the day one. But it won't have anticipated that this kind of response from Trump. Obviously, there may be certain extraneous factors playing in the Trump's mind, and so there is no clear rational explanation as to why he is putting this pressure at this point of time when India is willing to. Of course, there may be demands that the US is making. For example, they may be asking zero tariff on agricultural items and several other items, which are just difficult for India. India has a 1.4 billion population, out of which 800 million people depend on agriculture, with all the small farms and things like that. So these demands, which Donald Trump must have placed, or his negotiators must have placed before India, are just unacceptable, because you have a different set of economic character, socio-economic characteristics which cannot be wished away by one stroke of, you open up your market, give us the zero tariff access to all the items. It did not happen in the recent past of 80 years of global trade. What he's doing is essentially something that the British used to do in the 19th century, when they used to impose what are called the imperial preferences. They will dictate what you will do in your market. So that was the 19th century colonialism. But today we are in a different world altogether. This is supposed to be a world governed by rule of law. And that rule of law has now suddenly been upended on every front. So I think it's a very serious challenge for India. It's an kind of existential issue at this point of time. But India ultimately has to stand up. If you don't stand up today, the consequences are not in any way going to be better tomorrow. Standing up will give you more freedom to navigate your relations, external trade relations with other countries as well.
uh, Now that you ended the answer with the relationship with other countries, let me ask a question connected to that. So the US India relationship has gone beyond trade, especially in defense, semiconductors, and strategic cooperation, but political friction often bleeds into other sectors. So could non-trade sectors like defense exports and cooperation also be affected by this souring trade tone?
Yeah, yeah, obviously. I mean, we do have, whether we like it or not, there is a huge diaspora in US, 5.5 Indians, who had gone from here. They play a very significant role in the American economy across sectors. They provided, the intellectual wherewithal for every development in the US. So it will definitely have, because if you cover, I mean, if you cover to the kind of under pressure now, things will be more difficult for you even in other areas, because the price that he will ask in other areas as well will go up, whether it's in the defense corporation or whether it's in the high tech areas. For example, there is still no clarity that Apple, which is now set up, established its facilities in a big way and made India into a substantial, significant exporter of the iPhones. How will it operate? Suppose if with the new tariffs, not the immediate tomorrow's 25%, but the upcoming 25%. So somewhere this is a serious political issue, calculus in which the government has to very coolly and systematically, uh, consider, because it has long-term ramifications, not just long-term, even medium-term ramifications. For example, just for the sake of improving your defense relations with the US, you cannot be sabotaging your relationship with Russia, which has had a huge, presence in the Indian defense sector.
So, Trump has a history of moving the goalpost, from
Correct.
trade deficits to oil ties to defense alignment. So, some
Yeah.
believe this unpredictability is driven more by ego than economics. So, is Trump's ego playing a role in this tariff escalation as he keeps shifting his narrative and demands?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible, several irrational considerations or, influencing him. We don't know. I mean, there is still no clarity. But even on the ego issue, I mean, for example, if you sort of acquiesce to his, ego, that doesn't stop there. It has, tomorrow, the price that he will ask in other areas, even in trade itself, will be very higher, because this today there is a classical political theory about what the US is now, or today US is a declining hegemon in the global system. So a declining hegemon is always scared of something, that other countries will come together or other countries will not behave or respond to the American interests as he wants them. Even the American interests are not very fully satisfied, fully based on any very rational calculations. For example, there are cases going in the US courts against Trump's imposition of these tariffs under what are called International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So within US itself, there are strong domestic constituencies which are feeling that Trump's ad hoc, arbitrary, unjustifiable actions are not a correct course.
Thank you for your time, sir. Viewers, for more such analysis, stay tuned with the Federal.